Tonight, Pamela Ballantyne presents this week's edition of UTV Life. That's at 8 o'clock. Now, vote 19.
Good afternoon and welcome to Vote 19, UTV's first look at the results of the local government elections. So the people have spoken, but just what have they said? That's what we'll be trying to find out over the next 2.5 hours as we take you around each of the 11 council areas across the country. Our correspondents and reporters are on the ground and will bring you the latest on the seats up for grabs, as well as delving into the key battlegrounds. 462 seats are being contested in total, with 819 candidates in the running. Our political editor, Ken Reid, and the commentators, Alison Morris and David McCann, are with me in the studio. So let's take a look now at the turnout as things stand. And there is a bit of a health warning on this. Ken will talk about that in a second too. But the indications are that we're looking at a 52% turnout, which is slightly up on the last local government election 5 years ago. Ken, I did say there was a health warning with that. That's because?
Because we're still waiting on the final confirmation. A number of the boxes, for example, are open tomorrow. But all the indications are that the figure is slightly up on 2014.
Now, isn't that interesting? Because in 2014, we also had a European election on the same day, but this time, just the one.
Yeah, and I think it surprised some of the parties because there was an expectation that the figures could go down. Now, I think it's also significant that the turnout in the west of Northern Ireland is much greater than that in the east, and that has been the trend in recent elections.
The other thing is, too, that people obviously have wanted to say something to the parties by voting.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and I think as we investigate and discover the stories today, the fact that, you know, there appears to be the Green Party and the Alliance Party are perhaps attracting voters who perhaps didn't vote before. That is significant. I also suspect, though, that when all the votes are counted and all the seats are allocated, the overall picture will not have changed dramatically.
Well, we can take a look at the state of the parties at this early stage. So let's just see now how the parties are doing. Mindful that there are 462 seats altogether to declare, and this is only just after 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. But there is the state of the parties. The DUP on 32, Sinn Féin on 14 seats, the Ulster Unionists on 13, the SDLP 10, Alliance 18 seats, and others at this stage 13. And Ken, that is the story of the day, the Alliance Party.
Yeah, tremendous performance, and in fact they've also done well in areas that you wouldn't associate it with the Alliance Party previously. And I think the Greens are also delighted topping the poll in Botanic in Belfast, but the Alliance performance will be very encouraging.
Alison, what do you make of Alliance's performance at this early stage in the campaign?
I think it's interesting because we're also watching the results of the local government elections in England coming in, and we know there that the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party have made massive gains on the back of the Tory Party. That's being put down to Brexit. But what we can see here, I think, is a result of first-time voters, young voters who wouldn't have been old enough to vote in 2014. Their priorities are different from maybe the older voters who vote in sort of tribal terms, and they're thinking about things like climate change, they're thinking about other sort of issues and social issues, and they're voting for those more liberal middle ground parties. So I think that what we have seen in this vote is definitely those first-time voters making their voice heard very clearly.
David McCann, who would the casualties be in that case?
Well, it seems to be Alliance are making their gains primarily at the expense of the Ulster Unionist Party. In places like Ormiston, you're seeing Ulster Unionists suffer at the hands of Alliance's advances, and that's down to, as Alison was saying, the Alliance's more kind of broad approach. It suits a more liberal kind of unionist, that small U, more socially liberal unionist, who don't see the Ulster Unionists as a home for them, who won't go to the DUP, but Alliance are there quite comfortably as a safe option for them to go to.
Well, the other thing is, too, people have used this election to vote on local issues and not on the constitutional question in that case.
And they do. And the thing about council elections, too, is you vote for your local councillor as in the person who delivers, and sometimes that means we see quite strange and eccentric characters being elected during in local council elections, but also people like Paul McCusker and Ardoyne. So the SDLP seem to be more or less in decline or just about holding their ground elsewhere. And Ardoyne, which would be considered one of the most Republican areas of Belfast, he's topped the poll massively, so, you know, 2,600 something first-time votes. And that's just a result of someone who does the work on the ground as a local councillor. The quite mundane stuff, the bins, the street cleaning, the things that nobody else wants to deal with.
We're now going to take a look at the emerging picture in Belfast, which is what you were talking about there, Alison. So let's take a look at those who have been elected in Belfast. And there are 60 seats altogether to declare. At this stage, the DUP have 2, Sinn Féin 1, none yet for the Ulster Unionists. The SDLP have 1, Alliance 3, and the others have 2. Well, let's try and analyse that result, and we can go to our Deputy Political Editor, Tracy McGee, who's at the count in the City Hall. Tracy.
Yes, Paul, as you joined me just a few moments ago, there was a very noisy celebration as Green candidate Anya Grugan was confirmed as taking a seat in South Belfast. She topped the poll, something that the Green Party are absolutely ecstatic about, and one of the stories of this election. And as you've been saying, another story has been the Alliance Party, who have done very well. They have scored a hat-trick in East Belfast, and they look on course in East Belfast also to make, again, taking 2 seats in Titanic at the expense of Sinn Féin's candidate Mairead O'Donnell. So they're very pleased about that. Has to be said too that smaller party People Before Profit have also made again in West Belfast. Michael Collins has been elected. Now also the DUP have got Dale Pankhurst in North Belfast, but at the moment it would appear that that party, while their vote has gone up, it is not translating into seats. They look likely to hold what they have, essentially, but not the Ulster Unionist Party, who aren't doing very well at all. Their candidate in South Belfast, Richard Kennedy, managed only 333 votes, and we're being told that over in East Belfast, Peter Johnson looks likely to lose his seat. One Ulster Unionist source said to me that by the time this count is through, it could be that the Ulster Unionists have only 2 candidates in Belfast City Council. Now, so far we only have 1 Sinn Féin elected, that is Danny Baker, but I wouldn't read too much into that, Paul, because Sinn Féin are in places trying to get 5 out of 6 seats, so they are managing their vote very, very tightly. So the fact that we haven't seen many coming through from Sinn Féin might be more a sign of the fact that they have managed to manage their vote quite well. And then, as Alison was saying, absolutely stunning result for the SDLP's Paul McCusker, who scored 2,856 votes. Absolutely massive. Now the question is, could his surplus then potentially benefit 4 candidates in his same district? They're hoping that his votes will be distributed, which means they could potentially take 4 seats. So it's quite a lot to watch at the moment.
Tracy, thank you very much indeed, and we will be joining you later on in the programme. Ken, let's just have a word about the declining fortunes of the Ulster Unionists in Belfast City Council area. This is the party that used to run Belfast.
It's even more stark. If you look at 2014, the Ulster Unionists under Mike Nesbitt's leadership at that time, there were predictions of doom and gloom before that election. They did remarkably well, 16.1% of the vote overall, and 88 councillors throughout Northern Ireland. When I was a young reporter, the Ulster Unionists controlled Belfast City Hall. There was no question they were the party. The decline has been gradual. Now it appears to be almost spectacular. Now, there's one thing I have to say at this stage, though, and it's really important. There's a health warning in everything here. We're in a very early stage, and we know from previous elections, a bounce of the ball, as they say, in the final count and the final seat transfers where nobody saw it was coming, where it was going. That could also happen, but there's no doubt that there are worrying signs for the future of the Ulster Unionist Party. This is just the latest setback, and some time ago it was clear that the Ulster Unionists were losing their influence in Belfast City Council. But if, as Tracy said, possibly going down to 2 councillors, that would be dramatic.
Well, there was 6 councillors, David, in the last mandate. They lose 2/3 of their number?
Yeah, absolutely. And the Ulster Unionist Party really cannot afford any losses, and it's no better. It's a no better story for them at Westminster or Assembly level in the city of Belfast. And again, you have to take a look. I mean, Jim Rogers seems likely to get elected in Ormiston, but again, I'm thinking down the line for the future for the Ulster Unionist Party. Where are those younger candidates coming from that they can bank on? You know, and where are the Paul McCuskers in the Ulster Unionist Party, for example? They don't seem to be there. Jim Rogers' own vote is down pretty substantially as well. So the margins by which they're even holding their seats are significantly less. And just on Botanic, as Tracy alluded to, 300 votes. People Before Profit outpolled the Ulster Unionist Party in Botanic, former seat of Martin Smith, who was a Unionist MP there for a decade.
They're just having trouble defining themselves as to what they are. They don't really know as a party what kind of unionist party they are, and they've tried to sort of flail out in all kinds of directions. And in this time, I think it's an example of do not run a negative campaign. The Ulster Unionist Party tried to run a negative campaign against Alliance, who they've seen as their biggest rival. We know that there was lots of controversial election literature that pointed towards Alliance siding with Sinn Féin council votes.
Yes.
That's backfiring on them, and you can see that. People should be running a positive campaign based on what they can deliver, not a negative campaign based on what other people don't.
Ken, what kind of an election has it been so far for the DUP?
I think reasonable. Certainly much better than people might have predicted earlier this year when the party appeared to be in trouble, various controversy and all of that. I think talking to them that they're reasonably happy with the result, and I would imagine that when the final figures are totted up, they'll be quite close to the situation was in 2014.
They had been looking for an overall majority in Lisburn and Castlereagh.
Yeah.
Will they get that?
No, I don't think so. And they've already lost somebody quite high profile in Janet Gray, for example.
Well, let's take a look at the figures that we're getting in so far from the Lisburn and Castlereagh area. We've got 6 for the DUP, 4 for the Ulster Unionists and 6 for Alliance. And that's out of a total of 40 seats in Lisburn and Castlereagh. Our reporter Vicky Hawthorne is at the Count Centre in the Lagan Valley Leisureplex. Vicky.
Yes, good afternoon, Paul. As you say, yes, the DUP, their casualty here this afternoon is Janet Gray, and the party really admitting that they could lose other councillors before this count is over, admitting that their vote here in Lisburn and Castlereagh has been hit. This is obviously a very historically strong area for them, but it's pretty clear from a lot of the DUP faces here on the ground, they are concerned and a bit worried by how things have gone, because the real story here has been the strength of the Alliance Party's vote. An indicator of that, in the first 4 counts announced this morning, their candidates were topping the poll. They're absolutely ecstatic here. They currently have as you say, 5 councillors. The Ulster Unionists, while they seem to be struggling elsewhere, they are quietly happy here with how their vote is holding up. They so far have 5 elected, including their youngest candidate in this election, Ross McClernon. The TUV, though, they have lost their council seat. That's Andrew Girvan. And Sinn Féin, they have had no seats up until this point in Lisburn and Castlereagh. They are waiting and watching to see whether they could have a breakthrough in this election.
But Alliance is the talking point, certainly in Lisburn and Castlereagh. Vicky, can I just ask you a quick question about Alliance? Because during the last mandate, they had 7 at the beginning, then it fell to 5 because 2 councillors left the party, one of whom, Vasundhara Campbell, went to the DUP, the other one, Geraldine Rice, staying on as an independent. They were both standing this time. How have they been doing?
We don't know yet, Paul, is the answer. They've only just got to those areas and they've only begun those council counts in the last hour or so. So we're just trying to get a sense of those particular areas. But I think the other interesting thing for the councillors for Alliance who have been elected so far, 2 of those were standing for other parties last time round. One was standing for the Greens and wasn't elected, and the other was an NI21 candidate. So it gives you an idea of the transition in 5 years. If you remember, of course, NI21 5 years ago, they have Alliance have capitalised on that here in Lisburn and Castlereagh.
Vicky, thank you very much indeed. Alliance having an excellent election in Lisburn and Castlereagh because they've now got more seats than they had going into the mandate.
It's outstanding. There's no question about that. That will worry the DUP because that's seen as a strong...
What do you put it down to?
Again, I think that the circumstances. There's the whole Brexit debate where the Alliance Party are very much in the Remain camp. There's people are disillusioned by what's happening at Stormont or what's not happening at Stormont. And perhaps the Alliance Party is seen as somebody who's protesting, saying we need to get Stormont back up and running. And it seems fairly effective at that stage, as I say. What's also significant in this council, but really that has applied to others as well. And I was saying, areas like Newry, Omagh, even Enniskillen, people voting Alliance in Derry, that's very unusual.
To what do you put that down to?
Well, I think that when Naomi Long became the leader, she did recognise that Alliance had a problem in that their vote was very concentrated. So about 85% of Alliance's vote up until about 2015 was concentrated in the greater Belfast area. Naomi Long has tried to broaden that. So as Ken was saying, you've got Stephen Donnelly in Omagh, places like that, really working hard. And you've got Patrick Brown, for example, in Downpatrick, again, making inroads there and actually really establishing a beachhead for the Alliance Party. And that does seem to be coming at the cost of the Ulster Unionist Party.
And this is a mirror, is it not, of what's been happening across the water in the local government elections there. It's been a good election for the sister party of Alliance, you might say, the Lib Dems.
And that's a direct result of Brexit, and also, as we know, with the Greens, probably maybe the Extinction Revolution and all those sort of things. But what I will say, the Lisburn-Castlereagh situation, we talk about changing demographics a lot in terms of, you know, nationalists and unionists. In that area, we change in demographics in terms of it's up and coming, upwardly mobile people, unionists who when it came to Brexit with a small U, small business people who have come out for the first time and publicly spoke out against the DUP and their stance on Brexit. And so this could be a protest vote in relation to that.
Is that your take on it, Ken?
Yeah, to a degree, although I have to say that the DUP vote, although it's taken something of a hit in Lisburn Council, overall appears to be holding up. And I just don't detect any change in the DUP policy regarding Brexit, and I think they're going to persevere with that. Yeah.
Well, we've been talking about looking to the west for growth for the Alliance Party. Indeed, we're going to go west now because we're going to check out on the figures that have been coming in from Fermanagh and Omagh Council. So at this stage in the count, the DUP have 3 seats. Sinn Féin at this stage, none, but I think that will change big time. The Ulster Unionists have 2, none for the SDLP, none for Alliance, and the others are on 2. Well, let's just see how events are unfolding in Omagh, and we can join Gareth Wilkinson. Gareth.
Paul, thank you very much and good afternoon. Welcome to Omagh Leisure Centre. And really people's minds are getting very exercised actually here about a count that's not even taking place here today because all eyes have been on Barry McElduff, and very unofficial tallies from the verification process suggest that he is indeed on course to become an elected representative once again. Now remember, it's less than 18 months after he posted that infamous video of himself on social media with a loaf of Kingsmill bread on his head on the eve of the Kingsmill massacre. He had to resign his Westminster seat for Sinn Féin in huge controversy, but he's been back on the campaign trail in Omagh, and the big question here really isn't whether or not he'll get elected, but whether or not he's going to top the poll. But as I said, that count is not going to happen until tomorrow. Today what we got is the counts in the more rural areas in Erne East. The first person to be elected here today was Paul Robinson of the DUP, a very close ally of Arlene Foster. He topped the poll there. He was followed in by John McCluskey, who's an independent Republican, and his vote is actually seemingly putting Sinn Féin under pressure, and it's possible that a sitting councillor, Brian McCafferty, might be in danger of losing his seat there. Victor Warrington of the UUP also got across the line. Just before I stepped out here to speak to you guys, I heard in Erne North that Diane Armstrong of the UUP topped the poll there as well. Of course, this is Arlene Foster's home patch, but this isn't necessarily a DUP stronghold. She is hoping that some of her colleagues can eat into the UUP vote on this council here. As she's just left actually to go to a few other count centres. Before she left, she said she is happy with the overall picture in terms of how the DUP are doing across Northern Ireland. Here We've got 40 seats to fill. There's quite a long way to go so far. An interesting little story is emerging actually from the West Rowan count, where the long-serving Sinn Féin councillor Frankie Donnelly might actually be under pressure for his seat from another candidate, Anne-Marie Donnelly, who is in fact his wife. It sounds as if a Sinn Féin strategy to maximise their vote there could be in danger of actually backfiring. There's a long way to go in this election. It's never fast here in Omagh, but a lot of stories to come as well. Yet there is a feeling that tomorrow actually might be the main event and that this is merely a curtain raiser.
Gareth, thank you very much indeed. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that household if it doesn't work out for the party. But I see whatever happens, I mean, Sinn Féin went into this election with 16 seats. There's no doubt that Fermanagh and Omagh will not be changing hands.
No, absolutely. It's a very solid council for Sinn Féin. What's interesting about it is that there are a lot of independents running. So former SDLPers like Jo Dane, who's polling very well. Sorcha McInnesby, I know, hasn't polled particularly well either. I know she was with Fianna Fáil. So again, it'll be interesting to see, do some of those other independents do well, and can the SDLP withstand some of that pressure?
Stephen Donnelly is a very interesting figure because I think he's in his early 20s, yes, and he is already a veteran of about 5 elections for the for Alliance in that area.
Well, it shows how many elections we've all had to endure for this past few years. But I think it's interesting, that sort of nationalist independent vote, because we've seen that not just, you know, in Fermanagh, but also in places like Derry. You'll see it in Strabane as well, in places like West Belfast, where people before profit seem to be making gains. So you can see there's a diversity among the nationalist folk that probably didn't exist before, because if we went back maybe 10 or 15 years ago, those folks just automatically went to Sinn Féin. They never went anywhere else.
Okay.
But all of a sudden you see a sort of independence of thinking in that area.
Ken, in 5 seconds, sum up the first 19 minutes of the afternoon for us.
Well, I suppose the story is the Alliance Party making significant gains, the Green Party doing well, but the big parties largely holding their own.
Ken, thank you for now, and we will be checking in on the rest of the count centres after this short break. Do stay with us. Thank you. Hello once again. You're watching Vote 19, our rolling coverage of the local council elections. 52% turnout. Let's just see how that is shaking down into the actual figures so far in terms of those elected. So the DUP have 33 seats, Sinn Féin 15, the Ulster Unionists 16, the SDLP 10, Alliance 18 and others on 13. We're now going to go to the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, Robin Swann, who joins us from Ballymena. Mr Swann, good afternoon to you. Can I ask you first of all, why do you think the party is doing so badly in Belfast?
Well, look, at this minute in time, we're still pulling in results from across the country, Paul, so I'm waiting to see an overall picture before we make any determinations on how the party's faring. I've seen some of the counts in Belfast, and I know we've lost votes there. It's not a place I would want to be, it's not a place the party wants to be, but it's something we'll look at for as an overall picture, because there are other areas that we're picking up, and we're halfway through the first day of accounts, so let's see where we are tomorrow afternoon.
I would say, though, is that Belfast, once upon a time, and not too long ago, was a bastion of the Ulster Unionist Party. Where has it all gone so wrong?
Paul, at one point, Northern Ireland was a bastion of the Ulster Unionist Party. Times change and times move on. We have a responsibility to our electorate. It's a job we'll take serious. It's a job we have been taking seriously. And it's something that we need to learn from, something we'll work on and something we'll work on for the future.
So how do you reverse that decline?
Well, look, it's about looking and learning from where our voters went to, where it could potentially come from. Because I think one of the things in your opening comments there, you know, we've looked at a turnout of 52%, which is dramatically down from the last Westminster election or even the Brexit poll. So, no, there's something that we have to do as politicians for all our parties to make sure that we're engaging the full political spectrum out there, that people are coming out to vote to get the reputation and the representation that they want.
But if you cannot gain seats from the likes of the DUP, bearing in mind the recent bad publicity that the party has had, where and when can you make gains?
Well, look, Paul, this is a local government election. We fought this campaign on local government issues because that's where we want our councillors to be focused in the next 4 years. No, Stormont's not working, Westminster's a disaster, Brexit may happen, but one of the things we were putting to the people on the doors across Northern Ireland, this election was about electing local councillors who will decide what your local rates are, who will decide in your bin collections, your sporting facilities, your youth provision. And that's something, when you look back to our manifesto, the changes that we wanted to make in local government is something that our councillors, once they're elected tomorrow afternoon, will be bringing forward into council chambers. How we produce our rates, what we're spending our rates on, and also what debt our councillors are getting into to follow some projects that are purely based on ego for some politicians.
Do you have any regret about the way the Ulster Unionist Party in Belfast behaved towards Alliance?
Well, look, Paul, as I've said in the past, it's the language that was on that leaflet that was not language that I would have used personally. I think we've something to learn from there. The matter has been referred to party officers. We're a democratic party and that is a process to take, and I don't want to comment on that at this minute in time because we are in the middle of that process.
But it has backfired, and I think that you've been given an answer from the electorate in parts of Belfast because Alliance are doing rather well.
Well, look, Paul, it was a comment that was used on one leaflet and one DEA. It wasn't a central party message. It's not a message that I had endorsed across Northern Ireland, nor is a message that the party was carrying. And it's something I think we'll need to learn from seriously, and the party is looking at.
Robin Swann, thank you very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon live from Ballymena. Are we able to go to the leader of the Alliance Party now? We can. Naomi Long is waiting to talk to us. Naomi Long is speaking to us in Lagan Valley. Good afternoon to you, Naomi Long. Can I ask you, first of all, let me say congratulations to Alliance, doing very well. How do you propose to use this mandate?
Well, I think what we intend to do with this mandate is exactly what we have done with our strength of position in Belfast to date, and now we will be able to do right across, hopefully many councils in Northern Ireland with increased strength, and that is to ensure that there is openness and transparency, that there is delivery for the people who voted for us, and that we actually deal with the accountability issues that have plagued not just, I think, Stormont and Westminster in terms of delivery, but also what I think people want to see delivered at local council. We fought this about issues for local council. We fought it about dealing with the environment that people live in, about creating a shared society. We dealt with all those issues in our campaign, and clearly people responded to a positive message.
And this has not just been a bounce in the direction of the Alliance Party in isolation. How do you feel about your sister party, the Lib Dems, across the water? They've had a rather good election.
Well, they have, and I'm very pleased for them. I think that they have very clearly come out with a position on Brexit that we agree on, that we need to have a people's vote. And I think that that is something that has now been endorsed by the public, particularly in England, where there was actually a Leave majority. And I hope to see it endorsed again by the public in Northern Ireland when we get to the European elections. But today, for me, it's about those local issues. It's about the gains that Alliance has made now in the Greater Belfast area, where we were already strong, but we have seen ourselves going from strength to strength and take new seats. But it's also about the potential growth that we're seeing out west of the Ban, and that's a really important place for us. You know, to have polled, I think, almost 800 votes in Faughan in Derry Strabane Council from not having run there in the last elections is an incredible achievement for Rachel Ferguson, and she is still in play for a seat, and I wish her every success. She's not on her own. Stephen Donnelly could potentially take a seat in Omagh. We're looking very good in a number of places in Armagh and Banbridge District Council, and also Helena Young had a fantastic result in Uri. Places where Alliance was not on the map, we are now on the map today.
So you're no longer a Belfast-centric party?
Well, we still have the majority of our votes in Belfast, but the demographics, if you like, in terms of that are changing. We're seeing Alliance spread its message wider. I made a promise to people that I was going to deliver more activism west of the Ban, that I was going to reach out to places where previously we didn't have results. And we stood in all but 8 DEAs in Northern Ireland this time. And that has brought its own rewards. In places where we just simply hope to give people that opportunity to vote Alliance, they have taken that opportunity, grasped it with both hands, and put us potentially in contention contention for seats that no one was expecting. Whether we deliver seats in those or not is a long way down the line. With STV, you just can't count your chickens before they're hatched. But what I will say is, regardless, we're in play now for seats in places where we never were, and we certainly will be, if not in this election, in the next one. And that is a really positive outreach that we have been dedicated to do. It's not just about what I committed to do, it's about the party. The party put us back to the wheel. We've actually done the work on the ground. We have a grassroots campaign going on in those constituencies, and it has paid dividends.
Very, very briefly, you went into this election with 30 Alliance councillors. How many do you expect to be counting by the close of play tomorrow afternoon?
Well, it's very difficult because obviously a lot can change, particularly in the latter stages of a count. But I mean, at the last count, I think we had 20 people elected already on the first count. We have a number of other people who have been elected in subsequent counts. So, I mean, we're talking here about a complete transformation in terms of our numbers. What that looks like when the final seats are counted, and we will be in play for some of those final seats, all yet remains to be seen. But I'm optimistic we will be back with more councillors than we had, that we will have a broader spread in terms of Northern Ireland's geography, and that we have actually put into play opportunities for ourselves and for the people we represent in a much wider part of Northern Ireland than was previously the case. And ultimately, whilst I want to see the party succeed, whilst I want to see the party win, I'm in politics because I want to see Northern Ireland succeed. I want to see our people win, and I think when we are winning, they're winning. So I think this is a good day for everybody.
Naomi Long, thank you very much indeed for talking to us live from Lisburn. Ken, two different interviews there from two party leaders. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think Robin Swann was actually being quite realistic. He realises that he has a problem. Certainly the Ulster Unionists are not relevant at the moment in terms of Belfast. That's the message that the electorate are sending out. I think the result might not be quite as bad as it looks at the moment, because the Ulster Unionists have always been careful to have strong characters in council elections, people who are well known. But I would imagine that the overall figure is going to go down. And this decline is going on. And I think the core of the problem that Robin Swann has, what does the Ulster Unionist Party actually stand for now? With the DUP, it's clear. In some issues, it's to the right of the DUP. In other issues, it's to the left, sometimes in between. I think he needs to redefine that party and to make it clear what they stand for. For the Alliance Party, you could see that Naomi Long,
isn't she?
yeah, well, this is a great day for her, there's no question. But she does admit that there's still a problem. They have done well, certainly, in other places, but there's still an enormous area where they need to grow. And what will be the key to this, when all the results are in, will be the overall percentage for the Alliance Party, because they have previously failed to breach this 9% mark. Can they do that?
Can they do that, David?
It certainly looks like they're in with a shout. They're standing more candidates, and in terms of in different parts, which will up their vote. And as Naomi was pointing out, there in Vaughan and places like Derry and in Omagh as well, places where Alliance had never really recorded any presence before and were never ever a factor. They're actually polling pretty well with candidates who were. So Rachel Ferguson was only selected a few weeks ago. She hasn't been there for that long. She's not like Stephen Donnelly. So again, if Alliance can pull that over a very short term, you really have to say they've got good targets for the next election.
Alison, we will come back to you, if you don't mind, because we want to move around Northern Ireland as much as we can, which means that we are going to another count. We're going to take a look at the figures now for Antrim and Newton Abbey Council area. And again, it'll have a total of 40 seats whenever they're all counted. As things stand, the DUP have 5, the Ulster Unionists 2, the SDLP 2, Alliance have 4, and none for the others at this stage. Well, let's go to Deborah McAleese, who is with who is there in the Valley Leisure Centre. Deborah.
Well, good afternoon, Paul. Well, all eyes here today are on Alison Bennington, and she is the DUP's very first openly gay candidate. Now, as we speak, Miss Bennington needs just under 100 transfer votes to be elected. Now, there was a lot of fuss within the party when she was first elected as a candidate. As you know, that In the past, the DUP has been viewed as being hostile to the LGBT community, and they're obviously against same-sex marriage. But while there was a bit of upset from some members within the DUP at her being selected, the party itself has been extremely supportive, and they have said that she will be an excellent representative for the people here. Miss Bennington herself has been keeping a very low profile today. She says she doesn't want to do any media interviews. In fact, she seems quite uncomfortable by a lot of the fuss that is being caused. But in the past, she has said that she is standing based on what she can deliver as a councillor and not her sexual orientation. She's also said that her private life should stay at just that. Now, in terms of the overall picture, the Alliance Party are doing very well. Four of their 5 candidates have been elected, and 3 of their councillors actually topped the poll with first preference votes. And the former party leader, David Ford, he has been here most of the day, and he's absolutely ecstatic with how things are going, and he seems confident that they'll also grab another seat here. The DUP, they currently have 5 seats, and one of those to be re-elected was the former Mayor Thomas Hogg, who was suspended from the DUP for drink driving last year. So that's 5 seats for the DUP, 2 for the Ulster Unionists, 2 for the SDLP, and 4 currently for the Alliance. There was a bit of announcement there just behind me, so we'll keep you updated throughout the programme.
The Alliance Party went into this election with 4 councillors. Are you saying that it looks like they will come back with an extra councillor?
Well, we're still waiting for that at the moment, but when I spoke to David Ford earlier today, he is pretty optimistic that they could get a 5th seat, but we'll just have to wait and see. But yes, about an hour ago, David was still very optimistic about that.
OK, Alison, thank you very much indeed. Deborah, I should say, Deborah McAleese, thank you very much indeed. Let me just get a quick comment from you, Alison.
I think that the issue is you can see that the Alliance Party are not taking votes from Sinn Féin or the DUP. They're taking them from the Ulster Unionist Party. They're taking them from small U Unionists, and that is a problem, as Ken said, with the DUP not having a particular point of view. They don't have a particular focus point that people can say that is exactly what I'm voting for, because there's policies changed and they're so fluid. I also think it's interesting, the DUP openly gay candidate. I think that it dispels this myth that everyone from the LGBT community is somehow left-leaning and liberal. You can have very conservative people who are also members of the gay community, and I think that sometimes we don't recognise that.
But the DUP would prefer if we weren't talking about the sexuality of one of their candidates.
Well, I think it would be better if we all didn't have to talk about the sexuality of anyone's candidate. I think it would be if we had same-sex marriage here and we just normalised equality for people, but then we wouldn't have to be having these conversations. And the fact that we are is actually the DUP's fault for standing in the way of that progress. It's not the fault of you or I that we're still talking about these issues. It's the fault of the party for blocking progress on that issue. OK, right. Now,
there is an emerging picture at a number of different counts this afternoon. So let's go to the next one, which is in the northwest. We're going to see how the picture is unfolding in the Derry and Strabane council area. Our correspondent, Mark McFadden, is at the count there. Mark.
Paul, things are proceeding very, very slowly. I can tell you after 6.5 hours of counting, we only have 2 councillors confirmed elected, and both for the SDLP. It's not quite as exciting as Game of Thrones, but this game of seats seems like it's going to take just as long and be just as tricky to predict. The question is winter coming for anyone here? Well, we know that Sinn Féin is feeling a bit of an icy blast. They're coming under a lot of pressure. There are suggestions that they could drop 2 seats, maybe even 3. Smaller parties like People Before Profit, they're polling well. Onto have polled well as well. Their candidate, the retired GP, Anne McCluskey, she has over 1,000 first preference votes. A good chance of getting a seat there. People Before Profit, incidentally, their star candidate, Eamon McCann, the veteran socialist, his votes won't be counted until tomorrow. In this building a few years ago, he was elected as an assembly member. At that point, he sang the socialist anthem, the Internationale. It remains to be seen whether he'll be singing tomorrow, but we expect a strong showing from him. Now, besides the smaller parties, some things, it seems, never change. More than 20 years ago, Mark Durkin was elected to Derry City Council, serving some time there. Then Mark H. Durkin followed him as a councillor. Now, Mary Durkin has been elected as an SDLP councillor. 3 M. Durkins. It seems the Durkin dynasty is as strong as ever here.
Mark, before I let you go, Sinn Féin went into this election with 16 councillors in the Derry City and Strabane Council. You're suggesting that they will not come back with that same number?
That certainly seems to be the case, Paul. We expect them to drop at least 2 seats. There's a suggestion that it may be 3 seats. They were hoping to put up a strong showing here, even perhaps getting to the point of maybe wresting complete control. With 16 out of the 40 seats, they were hoping to get it up closer to the 2021 mark. That's simply not going to happen. In all of the DEAs counted so far today, Sinn Féin have been outpolled by the SDLP. And that's something a lot of people certainly didn't see coming. And it could certainly make for an interesting prospect for the next general election, because Sinn Féin hold the Westminster seat here, having taken it from the SDLP in surprising circumstances last time round.
Mark McFadden, thank you very much indeed. We look forward to talking to you later in the programme. Now, our tour of Northern Ireland is about to continue, because we're going to have a look at the way the count is going in the Causeway Coast and Glens. Paul Riley is there for us at the Coleraine Leisure Centre.
Well, this is the story so far in Coleraine. The DUP have one councillor across the line, that's John Finlay in Ballymoney. Topping the poll there was Darrell Wilson of the Ulster Unionist Party, but it looks like he's going to struggle to bring his running mate Tom McCune along with him. A seat there has gone to Sinn Féin. Leanne Peacock securing that seat for a party. They're likely to get a second as well. Well, also across the line is the independent Ambrose Laverty. He topped the poll in the Glens. He was quickly followed by the former MLA for Sinn Féin, Oliver McMullen, and his party colleague, Cara McShane. Also across the line there is the SDLP's Margaret Ann McKillop. It's the last seat in the Glens that is going to be very interesting. It looks like it's going to be a fight between the DUP and the veteran Ulster Unionist, Joan Baird. She's a former mayor of the council. The PUP have a councillor across the line. That was Russell Watton. He topped the poll in Coleraine. Not a good day for Northern Ireland's only Conservative councillor, David Harding. It looks like he is out of the race. Starting soon as the Bimbrada count, something to look out for there is the candidate Precious Brawley. He's standing for Aon 2. Let me give you a quick look at the state of the parties. The DUP is on 1 seat, Sinn Féin on 3, the Ulster Unionists on 1, the PUP on 1 and Independent on 1. All still very much to play for, but it seems that the picture won't change too much here at the Causeway Coast and Glens Council.
Paul Riley there in Coleraine, and I can confirm that Joan Baird has secured a seat for the Ulster Unionist Party in Causeway Coast and Glens, and confirmation from the count centre that there is to be a recount in the Coleraine ward. Now, it's time to say farewell to 2 of our colleagues this afternoon, Alison and David. Thank you both very much indeed. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again before long, but right now it's time to take a short break. Do stay with us here on UTV. Hello once again, you're watching Vote 19 here on UTV. It's our rolling coverage of the local council election results, and at this stage, just coming up to 10 minutes to 5 on a Friday afternoon, let's take a look at the state of the parties. The DUP have 34 seats, Sinn Féin 16, the Ulster Unionists 20, the SDLP 11, Alliance 18 and others at this stage 13. That's the state of the parties as we are having a further discussion now, and we've got 2 new guests, Alex Kane and Amanda Ferguson. Of course, Ken is still with us, but Amanda Ferguson, what do you make of what you've been seeing and hearing this afternoon?
Well, obviously it's early days. You know, we still have another full day of counting to go. I imagine what's going to happen is that the DUP and Sinn Féin will still be the big 2 at the end of this. You know, we've already seen Martina Anderson's European election posters, up lamp posts already, but I think so far today it's been a really great day for the Alliance Party and for the Greens as well. They can be very happy with what's happening, and then there's like standout moments like Paul McCusker in North Belfast. You know, he can be very pleased with that.
Alex Kane, previously you worked for the Ulster Unionist Party. What do you make of what you've been hearing and seeing this afternoon?
I think it's a very difficult afternoon for them. I've said before, in terms of the Belfast particularly because that was one of their targets. They wanted to get ahead of the Alliance Party just to prove they were on their way back. And then for reasons which I still don't understand, picked a pointless fight with Alliance, a fight which could not be won. Indeed, a fight which, rather than attract votes to them, was going to attract votes to the Alliance Party. That doesn't explain what seems to be happening across the province. You know, in a number of other areas you'd have expected them to hold. They're losing there as well. But it comes back to brand, Paul. It comes back to, I think Ken talked about it. If you ask people, say, what is the difference between the DUP and the UUP, they have some idea. They may hate them, they may love them, but they have some idea. Ask them about the UUP, and quite often you'll be met with a shrug of the shoulders and, oh, well, I've always voted for them or something like that. They need to find a role for themselves. It may be too late to find that, but that's what they need to do.
I know it's early days, Ken, but 34 seats for the DUP, they're head and shoulders above all of the other parties.
Yeah, but I do think that really probably sort of late tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, when the figures are added up, I would imagine the DUP, they have 130 seats at the moment. I think it'll be around that again. Sinn Féin perhaps at 105. I don't see any real major difference in the two major parties, but I have to say that so far this has been a surprisingly good day for the SDLP. I think that Paul McCusker's performance, as Amanda was talking about, is in some ways quite spectacular. 2,800 first preferences. And also their performance in Derry. Now, they were hurt when Mark Durkan lost the Westminster seat, because at that stage, Colm Eastwood, who's the new party leader, also from the city, they were determined to fight back. It appears that they've had some success in that. I mean, this is the area where John Hume came from. If they can't do well there, where will they do? People would also argue, perhaps, in the last election, there was the Martin McGuinness factor. You know, there was certainly a lot of sympathy towards what had happened. Martin McGuinness is much seen as something of a hero in that area. But as things settle down, it will be one of the more fascinating aspects of our politics to see whether the SDLP can try again and get a hold in the part of the area where really, part of the country where they've been so strong in the past.
Well, that's a point that we can put at some point later on this afternoon to the party leader, Colm Eastwood. But I believe we can talk now to Michelle O'Neill, who is the MLA and the deputy leader of Sinn Féin. Good afternoon to you, Michelle O'Neill, joining us from Marifelt. Quick question for you. How well do you believe it's going for Sinn Féin?
I think it's going very well. We set out in this election to do a number of things, not just to increase our number of councillors, but we also set out to actually get representation in councils where we currently didn't have that, and we've obviously just made a breakthrough in Lisburn and Castlereagh. So, I mean, that's obviously a good achievement. It is obviously early days, but we're very much taken by the fact that we think that the message was heard loud and clear on the doors. I think the message of equality and rights and Irish unity was something that we were certainly engaged with throughout all of the canvass and all the door wrapping, and we think people have endorsed that sentiment, and that's something then obviously that we will take as a strong mandate into the talks process as it begins next week.
I understand that there's a potential for losing a couple of seats in the Derry and Strabane area. That can't be good news.
Well, obviously it's never going to be good news if you're going to lose a seat, but if that's the case, and I haven't heard, I've actually been out on the road all day and I've actually only trying to catch up with the election results. Fair to say what we've seen so far has been positive. Where we've lost seats, obviously we'll pull up our socks and we will try to regain them again in future elections. Here in Mid-Ulster we've had a brilliant result so far with 10 councillors now confirmed, and our ticket will increase. We are the largest party on this council and we will remain the largest party after this election. So I think it's been a very positive day, but I think that what was very interesting about this council election was it was about big picture politics. It wasn't necessarily about the local delivery, although that is obviously important, but more so than any other council election in my experience, people wanted to talk about Brexit. People want to talk about the Assembly or lack thereove, and I think that that was what I'm sure all parties would have heard on the doorstep. People want politics to work, and I think that what we need to do today, obviously, have the results, get the final tallies in, and then take the mandates that we've all been given to get back into the discussions that we're going to have next week, this negotiation process that's going to start, and try to make politics work for people.
So how do you intend to use that mandate? What are you going to be saying during those talks next week?
Well, I mean, I certainly, if I was analysing the feedback from the canvass, it was that people want the Assembly, people want the Executive to work. They want us all as political leaders to work together. I also want to take the message that people want equality. I mean, we fought this election on the premise of equality, rights and Irish unity, and that was what people want to talk about. So I think what people are asking for is delivery. What people are asking for is that all citizens are treated equally. What people are asking for is for good, decent politics and integrity in politics, and that's the heart in which we will enter the discussions next week. But I suppose for today is about getting the results in. It's about the councillors who've done tremendous hard work out on the ground, campaigning, bringing their message to the electorate, and I'm very, very grateful for all those people that have come out and voted for Sinn Féin and gave us a strong mandate to go back and try to do more for them and to do well by them. And I think it's been another watershed election in terms of the fact that many people are motivated to come out and vote, and I don't think I've ever seen a time where people have been so in tune with the politics and the bigger picture politics.
I know that you've been on the road today and you haven't been able to keep up with all of the twists and turns in the road, but I'm sure you've taken a look at the picture across the water, the local council elections in England, where the Conservatives have been given a bloody nose. Labour as well, I should say, too.
Snippets of that, and I believe the Lib Dems have been making. I've seen that. I'm just picking up snippets of it as well, and obviously in the fullness of time. But I mean, I can't. I would understand why that would happen. I mean, the whole topic conversation, the whole issue to the main has been the issue of Brexit, and we all know how catastrophic Brexit is, and we also know that the fact that the Westminster Parliament is in chaos. So I'm quite sure that the results there reflect that. The electorate are sick, sore and tired of this infighting within the Tory party and the lack of politics in terms of delivering good government for people, because the only thing that we all are fixated on is Brexit. And we know here on the island of Ireland there's nothing good to come from Brexit, and we know here that this council election actually became about Brexit also, and I think people have sent a strong message that they do not want Brexit.
Michelle O'Neill in Barrowfeld, thank you very much indeed. Ken Reid, what do you take of the demeanour of Michelle O'Neill?
Well, I think overall they'll be fairly satisfied. Certainly, Michelle O'Neill didn't appear to be aware of what was happening in Derry, and of course that would be a setback for Sinn Féin. But overall, certainly they also have to take notice of the number of independents, particularly in the West, who have done reasonably well, and in fact quite a few are going to be elected. But I think when everything's analysed and percentages are checked tomorrow afternoon after all these results, the Sinn Féin strength will be maintained.
Yeah, so they went into the election with 103 seats. You think that...
I would imagine probably slightly more than that, actually. Mm-hmm. But they'll be satisfied. I think for the two parties, what was important from their point of view going into the talks this week is that they didn't lose ground, and I don't see any sign of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The mandate that Sinn Féin have, they will want to use whenever those talks resume next week, Alex Kane. But yet elections like this are about local issues. They're not about the bigger picture. Or they shouldn't be, but they are.
But in essence, that's exactly what Michelle O'Neill said. This was about the broader picture. And certainly when they launched the manifesto 2 or 3 weeks ago, border poll was mentioned 4 or 5 times. Arlene Foster, at the launch of her manifesto, was any vote for another unionist party or unionist candidate is almost an endorsement of Sinn Féin's divisive border poll. That's what this is about. You go back, Paul, the like for like, go back to the 2014 local government election. Sinn Féin and the DUP, between them, had 47% of the vote. Take in the 2 assembly elections, the general election since then, that vote has grown to 65%. When this is Ken's right, when we count all the figures tomorrow, I would be very surprised if they're not maybe nudging between 65 and 70%. And that's the impact on the talks, because they will say to the Secretary of State and to the government, we have a mandate for our positions. This is not, as I'm reading this now, and yes, it's a long way to go, I'm not seeing a mandate.
And Amanda, none of this is an accident. If the two big parties have actually extended their reach at this stage, that does strengthen their hands.
Oh, definitely. The DUP and Sinn Féin will both use this to strengthen their position going into the talks. They'll say that this is an endorsement of the positions that they have taken, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But regarding what Ken was saying about the North West, In Derry, the SDLP have some really good candidates out this time. They've got people like Mary Durkin. She was instrumental, obviously, from the Durkin family, yes, well known in the Northwest, but she was also instrumental in the Derry Girls Against Borders campaign, and she has quite a high profile from her legal work as well. And in terms of the independent Republicans that are doing well, a lot of them have made an issue of the fact that they're socialists, and I think also that it's a further indication that, yes, obviously, while Sinn Féin is the dominant force in republicanism, they don't own republicanism, so I think you see people like that coming through, and certainly Alliance being in the mix in places like Derry and Omagh and Newry is a really fascinating development.
Well, you mentioned Derry there, and the SDLP are having a good election at the moment, and I'm joined now by Colm Eastwood, the leader of the SDLP, who is in foil for us. It's going rather well for you in Derry.
Yes, it is, Paul. We set out a few months ago with a very clear vision to send a message that we're coming for the Westminster seat. We didn't like losing it the last time. It's a seat that we've held for a long time. I think today is a signal that we're back in business in this city. We've done an awful lot of work. We've some fantastic candidates. Many of them will be elected. Some won't, but they'll be sticking around, and I think we've done a very good job today. I think it's been a bad day for Sinn Féin in Derry, not just because we've done well, but also independents have done well, people before profit have done well, and I think it's really a signal around the edges of this election that people want politicians to get back to work, and I think that they've sent a message into the talks process next Tuesday.
So what will you be taking with you into those talks next week?
I'd be taking a very clear determination to try to get things back together again. You know, we've put down a number of different proposals to try to get people back to work. That's all we're hearing. All we're hearing is that whilst people have very strong views on many issues, they want people to be in Stormont. They don't think it's good enough not to have a government. They want their health service dealt with. They want the education cuts to be dealt with, and they're worried about Brexit. That's what we're hearing on every single doorstep. So I think it's important now that we all hear that message, that we listen to the public and get back to work.
But if it's the same people with the same message coming back, how do you break down the barriers? How do you break the walls down and get that message across to the naysayers?
Well, I mean, I think it's a bad starting point if we're trying to get people to agree to things that they're just never going to be able to agree to. That's why we've put down the proposal that we should reform the petition of concern over time for the next mandate, but in the meantime that we suspend it and get things moving. You know, one of the big issues that people talk about is marriage equality. I'm a big supporter of marriage equality. I want it delivered. We could have that delivered in 6 months if the petition of concern was suspended. It needs to be there, it needs to be properly reformed and all of that, but right now it is the main blockage. I think we're making a huge mistake if we think that if we're going to try and force the DUP, for example, to support marriage equality or Irish language, an Irish Language Act. Those things just won't work. It hasn't worked for almost 2.5 years, so we have to remove the blockages. In all of the good agreements that we had over the years, what needed to happen was some people won a bit and everybody lost a bit. That's how it works. We can't have big victories for one side, and that has been the mistake over the last couple of years in the approach to these talks. But I mean, we've got over much more difficult issues many times in the past, so it's time to get back to work in my view. I do think though this talks process should be very short. It should be very well handled by the governments, and people should be forced to come to an agreement, or else the governments will have to intervene at that stage.
I want to continue the interview with you in a second or two, but just to interrupt the chat at the moment to say that for the first time Sinn Féin has an elected councillor in Lisburn and Castlereagh. That news just breaking at the moment. We'll have more on that in a moment. But how do you extend the reach? It's been a good election for yourselves in Derry and Strabane. How do you extend that reach beyond there to other parts of Northern Ireland, because there is pressure on the SDLP in some other areas?
Oh, there is, but you can also look at people like Paul McCusker. They're weighing his votes instead of counting them. That just shows you when you go out, you get good people to come in, join the party, have good campaigns behind them, and work tirelessly on the ground. We can win, and that's what we need to learn right across the north. There's some other very good stories, but we're involved in the regeneration of the party. It is beginning, and we are beginning to do that work. We will multiply that formula across the north.
Let me ask you a question then. Why did Paul McCusker not have a running mate?
Good question. I think we will look at that and see where I want to see where Paul's transfers went to see whether that would have been a good idea or not, but I think we'll have one the next time.
OK, Colin Eastwood, thank you very much indeed. Alex Kane, I mean, he said that they weighed Paul McCuskers' votes. Yes, they did. But surely there was a case there for a running mate, a second candidate for the SDLP.
Well, it certainly made sense. I don't know whether it was a sort of internal, they couldn't decide, or whether they weren't sure how they Fianna Fáil and a number of other issues were going to play. So maybe it's one of those things, you bank what you hope is a certainty, but don't risk a certainty. I've seen too many elections where two candidates put up and both lost.
Yes, and it looks like that. Well, there is talk about the Donnellys, Mr. and Mrs. In West Tyrone, being in that particular boat.
Well, that's the problem. So it's the curse of PR. I mean, parties do try and manage it and say in this area they don't want to. The public have a strange habit of doing exactly what they want to do, and what looked like perfect voter management on paper turns disastrously wrong.
I'm just told that that Alison Bennington from the DUP has been elected to Antrim and Newton Abbey Council. We're expecting confirmation of that. She polled extremely well and she was just about 100-odd votes shy of the quota. But it now seems that with transfers she has passed the post, and as I said, at this stage it seems likely, it's not yet confirmed, but as soon as we get confirmation of that, Alison Bennington elected for the DUP as a councillor in Antrim and Newton Abbey. So, Ken, it's not confirmed yet, but not really a surprise given the healthy first preference vote that she received.
You know, it's a very good performance. You know, there's controversy within the DUP ranks about it, but this decision was taken at the highest level in the DUP.
Why should there be controversy?
And well, this is a Northern Ireland problem, and also the fact that the DUP has been the party that is seen to be blocking things on the equality issue.
But Alison Bennington, I'm sure, would prefer we were talking about her policies.
Yeah, Alison Bennington would, I'm sure the DUP leadership would as well, but it is significant, there's no question about that. I thought it was remarkable, even at the launch of their election manifesto, that Alison Bennington was in the front row, as it were. That was a statement. And perhaps going into the talks process, that is something that can be built upon.
And Alison Bennington is a changing face of the DUP.
She is indeed, yes. And she got the endorsement of Philip Brett, who's obviously Nigel Dodd's right-hand man. I think he increased his vote by, I think, 50%, I saw online there. Belfast is, and the greater Belfast area is really interesting this time round, and what Colin Eastwood saying about North Belfast and about Paul McCusker is interesting. Many observers had thought to themselves, why did the SDLP not run two candidates in Old Park and run one in Castle? Now the Castle result will be coming out tomorrow, and I'd imagine you would see maybe John Finucane topping the poll there. So it'll be a battle for them to get the one seat, never mind trying to get two there. So that'll be something for them to look at.
It isn't confirmed yet that Alison Bennington has been elected, but we are expecting confirmation of that. But in the event of Alison Bennington being elected as a councillor for the DUP, what pressure does that put on the party to change policy on certain issues?
Well, do you know something, Paul? It's slightly ridiculous. As someone who is a unionist and comes from a unionist background, maybe the DUP, that the evangelical wing of the DUP, will finally accept that a gay unionist can be just as good a representative and promoter of the union as a straight unionist. And I would like this, personally, this is from a personal view, I would like this to be the last election in which we have to hear the thing about gay or non-gay.
But as Ken Reid nailed it, this is Northern Ireland.
It is Northern Ireland, but Northern Ireland is changing very, very slowly. And do you know something? The DUP have to make an electoral calculation. There's a border poll being talked about, Paul. You cannot say to certain people,
We're seeing live pictures here of Alison Bennington, and by all accounts, it looks to me as if she has been elected as a councillor to serve in the Antrim and Newton Abbey borough. But I mean, the fact that a DUP voter will vote for Alison Bennington also sends out a message.
I've been saying that for years, Paul. I mean, unionists want, it doesn't matter what your political background is, they just have to accept that people can come from a variety of backgrounds, and as long as they're promoting the cause you believe in adequately, articulately, eloquently, the rest of it doesn't actually matter. Once the bedroom door is closed, that's it. That's their business.
Sorry, Alice.
The public's always been ahead of the politicians on this, and the DUP finds itself in a position where it's trying to restrict rights that are enjoyed by other British citizens and the rest of the UK, so it's not sustainable.
Yeah, just looking at the pictures from the count there, she's with Pam Cameron and Paula Bradley, who would be seen as two of the most progressive DUP MLAs, and that in itself is significant.
So those are live pictures there from the count at the Valley Leisure Centre, and we'll be continuing our tour across Northern Ireland now because Jordan Moats is in Armagh, where the votes are being counted for Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon Council. Jordan, how's it all unfolding there?
Yes, well, things are fairly slow here. Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon, of course, is the largest council area in Northern Ireland outside of Belfast. 41 seats here up for grabs with 72 candidates battling it out for those seats. So far, we only have 7 declared. 3 for the DUP, 2 for Sinn Féin, 1 for the Ulster Unionists and 1 independent. Darren Cosby topped the poll for the DUP in Portadown, followed by his colleague and former MLA Sidney Anderson. Sinn Féin's Paul Duffy also made it through there on the first count. The Ulster Unionists rounding off the seats declared so far in that area. Meanwhile, in Craigavon, the DUP topped the poll, but it was Sinn Féin who got the first seat with another former MLA, this time Catherine Nelson. Elsewhere, independent candidate Paul Berry is through, along with his former DUP colleague Gareth Wilson. Now, we haven't got a full turnout just yet, but one area we did see saw a nearly 63% turnout of people casting their votes yesterday. The other areas sitting at around 52%. Overall, the DUP and Sinn Féin seem to be holding their own, with Alliance doing better than some had expected. Ian too had hoped to make gains here from Sinn Féin, but that doesn't look like it will happen. And if there was to be a Brexit bounce, it wasn't felt here. UKIP held the seat in Portadown, and that looks likely to go. So with so few seats declared so far, it's difficult to exactly see how this will all work out. The boxes in 4 of the areas here have been opened. 3 other areas haven't even been thought about. Now, it had been hoped this count would be completely finished this evening, but there's a lot still to play for here, and it looks like it's a long way to go here in Banbridge.
Jordan Moats reporting there from the ABC Council count. Now, for an update on what's happening in Mid and East Antrim, we can join our correspondent Sharon O'Neill. Sharon's in Ballymena.
Well, it's still very early days here. The full picture will not be known for some time yet. But the state of play at the moment is the DUP has 3 seats, the TUV has 2 and Alliance has 2. There are 40 seats up for grabs here, so it's still an awful lot to play for. Where I'm standing, it's very relaxed, but down below where the counting is taking place, there's a lot of number crunching going on because there are some stories emerging. As you know, this is a unionist-dominated council. The DUP had 16 seats last time around. This time they want a majority. Sources are saying they may fall just shy of that. Now many are seeing this constituency as the litmus test for the party's stance on Brexit. Now moving to the Ulster Unionist Party, they had 9 seats the last time around, but we are being told that they could possibly lose 1 seat to the Alliance Party, which is polling very well. The TUV, which were the big success story in 2014, had 5 seats, and they're hoping to repeat that success. We're just waiting for a result here. Now, in terms of another fight, there's a battle within nationalism. Always hard to make inroads here, but Sinn Féin is hoping to clinch a seat from the SDLP with the retirement of Declan O'Lone. Can Patrice Hardy do it? Well, we will have to wait and see, and if that does happen, it means that there would be no SDLP representation on this council. That said, major health warning, but there's still a lot to play for. I'm being told it's a tight race.
Sharon, thank you very much indeed for the latest from the Mid and East Antrim count. They'll be returning 40 councillors there, and we will be getting more information from Sharon as it comes to us. Ken, looking at Jordan Moats' report there from the ABC Council area, I recognised people like Sidney Anderson. I recognised people like Stephen Moutray, both of them candidates, and Sidney Anderson is elected from what we were hearing there. But the reality is that there seems to be life for former MLAs in local government.
Well, recycling's all the craze at the moment, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, Sidney Anderson, it occurred to me when he was at Stormont, was very much a councillor and that's where his main interest was. And these people come from councils, they're more comfortable there, and it's really no surprise. I think you'll find throughout a number of the councils that though a number of people, Catherine Nelson, for example, was an MLA at one stage, those people feel that their future is perhaps in local politics and in council, so there's no surprise. And the other thing those people would have an advantage is they would be known, they would have a profile.
And so the parties will maximise that, won't they? I mean,
Yes.
people know who someone like Ian McRae is in Marifelt, Stephen Moutre, Sidney Anderson, Danny Kinahan is standing in the Mid and East Antrim area.
I think as well that the council's the only show in town at the moment. You know, obviously the Brexit is dominating over in Westminster, and we don't have Stormont. But I can see that a few results that are coming in through on the phone. Michael Collins. For People Before Profit, he'll be pleased to get elected. He actually did the journalism course with me and had done some of the publicity side of things for People Before Profit. So
maybe that's where he learned his trade.
They'll be delighted with that. And I believe that Graham Craig's likely to lose out in Botanic, where Tracy, his running mate's likely to take that seat. I don't think any of the controversies around him have helped, but it has to be said that result for Anya Grugan for the Greens and Botanic is a real stunning performance for them, and I think that they've benefited as well from having strong leadership within Claire Bailey and her having quite a high profile from the Assembly. So I think that when I was talking to the Greens earlier in City Hall, they believe that the revolution's underway.
Amanda, thank you. Let's draw a line there because we're going to take a short break now, but it is a short break and we will be back very shortly. Do stay with us. Hello once again, you're watching Vote 19. It's our live coverage of the counts in the local government elections that have been taking place yesterday, and the counts have been going on since 8 o'clock this morning and are due to finish at some stage tomorrow. But all eyes at the moment are on the councillor who has been elected for Antrim and Newton Abbey, and our reporter there at the Valley Leisure Centre is Deborah McAleese. Deborah, bring us up to date with the fortunes of Alison Bennington.
Yes, well, just in the last few minutes, Paul, Alison Bennington was elected to council. There were loud cheers when she was elected, and she was just being congratulated there by a lot of the other candidates. Now, she was elected on the sixth count. She had 1,052 votes. And just before her, John Smith, another DUP candidate, was also elected. So that brings the DUP seats up to 7. Now, Miss Bennington, she seems to have left the building. I know that earlier she'd said that as soon as the count was over, she was planning to leave. So I know that she's been feeling a bit stressed by all of the attention that is on her at the minute. But she was extremely delighted looking whenever she got voted in. And so now I suppose we're just really waiting now to see if the Alliance Party will take another seat. So we'll keep you updated.
But before we go on to the Alliance Party, Deborah, I think it was interesting because we're still looking at the pictures of the election of Alison Bennington there. She was surrounded by two high-profile DUP MLAs, Pam Cameron and Paula Bradley.
Yes, so even though there was a bit of anger with some DUP members that she was being selected, the DUP as a whole have been very supportive of her. And actually earlier in the day, Nigel Dodds, the deputy leader, was here and he was having a coffee with Miss Bennington. So the DUP as a party has been extremely supportive of her. And as I say, she's being congratulated by her other party members, but also other candidates as well. So this perhaps is the DUP is starting to show that they are becoming a lot more inclusive, and it's an attempt by them to reach out to the LGBT community.
Alliance went into the election with 4 councillors. How many have they got back at this stage?
Well, they've got 4 back at this stage. They are hoping to perhaps secure a 5th seat. When I was speaking to David Ford earlier, he was feeling very confident that they could secure this 5th seat. So I think we'll just have to wait and see. We don't know what's going to happen, but he seems fairly confident.
Thank you very much indeed at the Valley Leisure Centre. We will hope to be speaking shortly to the leader of the DUP, Arlene Foster. She has just arrived at the City Hall, and as soon as she is ready to hear us and to talk to us, we will go there. But Ken, again, a confirmation of it being a good election for Alliance. Looks like they could have a gain in Antrim and Newton Abbey.
Yeah, it's an excellent election. There's no question about that. And I suppose the first day story in this election will be the success of the Alliance Party. I think that their performance in Belfast City Council is in some ways quite remarkable and does sort of mark a sea change in things. The fact also that they may perhaps get seats in areas where they wouldn't necessarily be strong previously. That is also significant. Whether those votes actually turn into seats, we'll have to wait and see. But there's no doubt that Naomi Long, I think, has had a very, very good day.
Now, what about Alison Bennington?
Yeah, well, it's a good result. Amanda talked earlier about Philip Brett. Philip Brett's an important player in the DUP now because he works with Nigel Dodds. I would see him at Westminster a fair bit. And he's one of these, I think, in the progressive wing of the party who feels that things have got to open up a bit. Pam Cameron and Paula Bradley would be of the same opinion. Because it all comes down to winning votes. And if you're excluding part of society, then your vote reaches narrow.
Amanda, this clearly will be one of the stories of this election.
Yes, definitely, and I don't think it's any mistake. I think that Naomi Long herself, made a priority of getting out there, getting west of the band, moving away from this perception. Alliance gets accused of being small.
I was actually talking about Alison Bennington.
Oh, Alison Bennington again. Sorry, I thought you were talking about. No,
that's one of the talking points, Alliance. But I think Alison Bennington is also one of the talking points.
I just heard the Al bit at the start. Yes, no, that it is. I'm sure that the attention that's on her is a little bit intimidating for her. But she has to understand that would have been one of the reasons why she was selected to change the mood music.
Yes, but she would have been selected as well because she was prepared to toe the party line and would buy into the policies of the party. Yeah. And of course, it does send out a message, does it not, to the wider electorate that the DUP has changed.
Well, yes, it sends a message that they are certainly prepared to change. They're preparing to begin that journey. And all these things, there are electoral calculations in all of this. If Alison had lost, if the DUP's vote had gone noticeably down, even if she had won and so on, they would have rethought. They have now realised, they've made the calculation. What they now have to decide is about 10,500, I think, Free Presbyterians in Northern Ireland. There's still a small evangelical wing of the party. DUP has to decide, is it worth challenging them? Because where else are they going to vote? Or do they just say, look, if you believe in the union and you want to attract as big an audience of that union as possible, then I'm sorry, as Ken says, you cannot be closing the door.
That message has been very slow, has it not, to get through to the DUP?
But it has been slow, Paul. But you know something? My experience of the DUP, when they move quickly.
Well, we're just about to see how quickly they have moved because we're able to talk now to the leader of the DUP, Arlene Foster, who joins us live from the City Hall. Arlene Foster, thank you very much indeed. You'll be pleased to hear, I'm sure, that Alison Bennington has been returned, but probably not so pleased to hear that we're talking about her sexuality.
Indeed, because of course Alison put herself forward because she's a committed unionist, and that's why she decided to put her name forward for the Democratic Unionist Party, as many others did right across the country, and she was selected on that basis.
But you will know as well that because of the moral stand taken by the DUP, that it was always going to be a talking point to people like me.
Well, absolutely, but I am hoping that you'll also move on and do the talking point where it shows that actually we have increased our percentage share of the vote thus far, and indeed in many areas have done particularly well. If I look at Mid-Ulster Council, for example, it's wonderful to see the increase in the vote there, and delighted to see the fact that we've gained a seat in Macrofelt. We've taken 2 seats there instead of the one that we held. We had a tremendous vote in Dungannon Town, where again our 2 candidates were elected very quickly. And so we've seen a really good election for the Democratic Unionist Party right across Northern Ireland.
I know you're keen to look at the bigger picture, and I understand that, but to get back to the election of Alison Bennington here, surely that sends out a message to potential voters of the DUP that times are changing.
Well, it sends out a message that the DUP is open to everyone who signs up to the policies of the Democratic Unionist Party, as Alison did. Alison is a committed unionist. She believes that the DUP is best placed to secure the union and to deliver on Brexit as well, obviously. And that is why she signed up to become a candidate, and that's why she's been elected today. And I'm delighted for her, and I'm delighted for all of the candidates right across Northern Ireland who are being returned.
What do you say to those people within the DUP who are uncomfortable?
Well, there are people who are uncomfortable. I think it would be right to acknowledge that. But as I indicated last week, our policy in relation to same-sex marriage has not changed. We still believe in that marriage is between a man and a woman. That has been our policy and will continue to be our policy.
Well, what do you say to members of the DUP? It's a broad church, people who are gay, who would like to be in a committed relationship, would like to be married to their partner, but cannot be in Northern Ireland.
Well, they can be in a committed relationship, but what we're saying is in relation to marriage, we believe that the institution of marriage is between a man and a woman, and I think that that has been our position and still continues to be our position. I reiterated that just last week. But the thing to remember is that in our rules and regulations for the Democratic Unionist Party, and as you know, I joined the DUP from the Ulster Unionist Party back in 2004, is the fact that everybody is equal under the law and equally subject to the law. We are open to everyone who signs up to our policies and our principles, and that's the case, and we're very much delighted to see new people coming in from all walks of life. There are many former nationalists who are voting for our party because they believe in our pro-life stance. We've seen that in places such as the west of the province, and I'm sure we'll see that happening tomorrow in some other places as well.
Policies can change as people change, and the election surely of an openly gay councillor is going to open up debate within the party.
And look, we're a democratic party. It's good to have debate. I mean, I am the leader of a party which prides itself on its name, the Democratic Unionist Party. There's always space for debate. There's always space for us to have that debate. But when we settle on a policy, we settle on that policy, and that is the situation. The policy is set by the executive of our party and will continue to be so.
And the broader picture for the unionist parties at the moment, I know that the Sinn Féin have been dining out and wanting a border poll. You still think that's a non-runner?
I do think it's a non-runner, and I think you will see that the strength of the unionist vote is still very much there in terms of our vote. I'm delighted to see there's obviously been a return here in Belfast City Council. I'm delighted to see the way in which our vote has held and indeed increased in many areas. And if I look at Portadown, for example, and see the vote that was taken there, an absolutely huge vote, and I haven't heard it being spoken about much today, but Portadown, Dungannon, Magherafelt, places like that, we're seeing a huge vote for the Democratic Unionist Party.
What about your partners in government across the water? They haven't had a good election.
No, indeed they haven't had a good election, and I think that many across Great Britain are given, in England are given their verdict in relation to the way in which Brexit has been handled. People want to see Brexit delivered. They want to see it delivered in a meaningful way, and unfortunately that hasn't been allowed to happen.
And how will you use the mandate that you have gained to go into the talks next week?
Well, yes, absolutely. We will use the mandate to go into the talks next week. As you know, we made a call before the election that the Assembly should be set up immediately and talks should happen parallel to that. We still believe that that is the way forward, because we were hearing very strongly as we went across the country that people wanted our Assembly back immediately to deal with hospitals and to deal with schools, to deal with roads, to deal with job creation. We feel very fundamentally that the Assembly needs to be back immediately, and we're ready. We want to do that immediately and have a parallel talks process to deal with any other outstanding issue.
You know as well as I do that there are red lines there that are not going to be moved, so you can say what you like. You may not be talking to each other, but you are going to be talking at each other then.
We are going to be talking to each other, and I hear a lot about rights from Sinn Féin, but there are people who have rights as well who are being denied those rights because we don't have an assembly. People who have a right to get their hospital appointment on time, people who have rights to get their children educated in the most effective way. Those rights are being denied because Sinn Féin won't come into the assembly. I think it's time we come together, we set the assembly up, and we have a parallel talks process to deal with all of the other issues.
I wish you well in that quest, and Arlene Foster, because we know the Sinn Féin response. But for now, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's Arlene Foster, the DUP leader, live there at the City Hall. Ken, what do you make of the demeanour of Arlene Foster there?
Well, Arlene Foster is in a management job. I would expect that probably with your interview there, she would have wanted to talk about other things than having an openly gay candidate. But she's going into these talks this week. She has a lot going on in the sense, I don't expect these talks to be quick and sharp, as people are saying. First of all, there's the probability of a European election on May the 23rd. Two of the party leaders are candidates in that. I would imagine that towards the end of the May, the governments will try and get things together again and start a process. At the same time, there's a situation with the Conservative Party in Westminster. Arlene Foster made it quite clear from what she said there. The DUP have given up on Theresa May. There's no question about that. But they also know that they're in quite a strong position in that whoever takes over from Theresa May will have to go to the DUP and try and get another confidence and supply deal if they want to take over in 10 Downing Street without a general election. And looking at today's results, where the Tories have already lost 1,000 seats, I think that is probably quite likely. So she has to manage that as well. It's going to be it's a difficult time, and even with those talks going on, Brexit will be in the background. And I certainly don't detect at this stage people moving their red lines.
I don't think we can overestimate either the catastrophe that the elections across the water in England have been for the Conservatives.
No, well, I think that's true, and Ken's right. I mean, Arlene will not be looking too much at the talks. I don't think the talks are a priority in the next few weeks. Her big concern will be, is the scale of the Tories' losses now so high that Mrs May cannot survive? And is there a possibility, however small it may be, that we could be into general election territory? Because the worst nightmare for her, of course, is that the DUP lose all that authority.
I have heard it said, Amanda, that the end of May will indeed be the end of May.
It very well could be. I think that the latest thing I saw coming up on my phone is that they've lost over 1,000 seats. Now that's massive, and obviously Labour are suffering as well. And I think that the Labour are suffering because they don't have a concrete, direct policy on Brexit. And I think that could be one of the reasons why the Ulster Unionists have suffered a little bit here. I think one of the figures that's going to be interesting whenever this is all done and dusted is the combined unionist vote. You know, how much of a hit has the UP actually taken in these circumstances? And I think what Arlene Foster is talking about there, about everybody being equal under the law, everybody isn't equal under the law at the moment, and I think that's what the problem is.
Thank you for now, Amanda, Alex and Ken. We're going to take another break. But it's a short one, and it'll not last terribly long, and I hope that you'll be able to stay with us here on UTV as we continue to digest not only the tea, but also the results that are coming in from the council elections around Northern Ireland. See you shortly. Hello once again. You're watching Vote 19. It's our live coverage of the results that are coming in from the councils across Northern Ireland. I'm glad to say that David McCann rejoins us in the studio along with the rest of the panel, Ken, Alex and Amanda. And let us now take a look at the state of the parties this Friday tea time. So, 462 seats to declare in total. And here we are along the way. The DUP have 43, Sinn Féin 18, the Ulster Unionists 23, SDLP 14, Alliance 18 and others 13. And that's the state of the parties this Friday tea time. Now, we're continuing our tour of Northern Ireland because we've not been around all of the count centres yet, but we are about to join the Newry and Mourne and Down Council count. And our reporter there is Judith Hill in the Newry Leisure Centre. Judith.
Well, Paul, I've been listening on enviously to some of the other council areas because we have only one solitary councillor elected so far here in Newry, Mourne and Down. We've had quite the wait here, but in the last hour, the SDLP's Gareth Sharvin was first across the line in this nationalist-dominated council. Now, the turnout is high here, 56%. That's up on the last time round. And the big picture story really is that tug-of-war between Sinn Féin and the SDLP here. Both had 14 seats from the last council election, totally even Stevens. Sinn Féin fielding more candidates this time, SDLP fielding less, maybe an indication of their confidence levels, and Sinn Féin saying they are confident of gains here. Now, independents are also faring well with the numbers that we do have so far. Very few results, but the numbers are showing that independents, as in other parts of Northern Ireland, are faring well. The other story here is the Alliance Party. They fielded 7 candidates this time round. They have 2 seats that they're defending, and they're cautiously hopeful at this stage. They really see this patch as a potential growth area for them. So it is really still early days here. Unionism was squeezed the last time round. The DUP saying their votes are holding up pretty well here. So early days, as I say, a mix of veterans and some really youthful faces here. One Alliance councillor is set to sit his April results in a few weeks' time. So really the full picture is set to emerge. Just that one solitary SDLP councillor, and the rest of that picture will really fall in place.
Right. Judith, thank you very much indeed for that. The technology has beaten us slightly there, but we thank you for your patience, Judith. The patience has paid off. We're off to Mid-Ulster now, and Sarah Moore is at the count in Magherafelt. Sarah.
Hello, Paul, and hello from Magherafelt, where seats really are filling up fast here. Now, I can tell you, so far we have 24 councillors elected here, so we really are more than halfway through this count. And Mid-Ulster can boast to having the first councillor elected right across Northern Ireland. That came in just after 10 o'clock this morning, and that went to Sinn Féin's Darren Totten. Now, just looking at the numbers, Sinn Féin so far have 10 seats, and the DUP so far have 5 seats. But the DUP are very happy in Mid-Ulster. They've managed to gain a seat at the expense of the Ulster Unionist Party. But it was Sinn Féin who have lost a seat here, and they've lost out to an independent councillor, and that was Dan Kerr. Now, the UUP, they're maintaining their votes, and they're doing OK with their 4 seats at this point. Stories, well, at the moment, all eyes are on that DUP hopeful Kyle Black. Now, Kyle Black's father, a former prison officer, was murdered by dissident Republicans in 2012. Kyle is hoping to break into politics. I was told that he is expected to top the poll here. Now, he's just 97 votes off getting through, and we are waiting and wondering what is going to happen. But it is just really a matter of when. I was told that really that seat is secure for Kyle Black. Another interesting story was the revival of a political career, Ian McRae. Now, he was a former DUP MLA, and of course he is the son of former DUP MP William McRae, but he has indeed been eliminated from the race. Now, I was told that he was happy to, put his hat in the ring and see what happens. Things are happening really quickly here, and I would say Mid-Ulster should get the award for the fastest count centre. Many of us here have barely had a chance to get a cup of tea. I've been told they're very confident that this count centre will be wrapped up today.
I can see the delight written all over your face, Sarah Moore in Magherafelt. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we're going to Ards and North Down next, because at the count centre there in Bangor is Eden Wilson.
Well, here in Ards and North Down, a predominantly unionist voting council area, it comes as no surprise that the DUP have gained the most seats so far, with 4 candidates topping the polls. Close at their heels, though, the Alliance Party, who have also had 3 candidates take their seats. Speaking earlier to the Ulster Unionist Party, they told me there is concern that the Alliance Party could snatch a few of those seats away. The Alliance Party feeling quietly confident. They told me earlier that their plan and aim is to gain the exact same level of seats as the last election, with the hope of gaining 3 more, making it up to 10 councillors. As for the long-standing nationalist seat here in Ards and North Down, the SDLP have retained their spot. The Green Party have fared well in first preference votes. They'd be happy too with just maintaining the same level of seats in Ards and North Down. But it's an unfolding story here at the Aurora, with the count expected to spill in to Saturday.
Eden Wilson, thank you very much indeed. Now, that concludes our roundup of all of the counts that have been going on in Northern Ireland today, all 11 of them. But we can return to Belfast now because Tracy McGee, our Deputy Political Editor, is there and she's able to update us now with the latest comings and goings in the City Hall. Tracy, bring us up to date.
Yes, you're coming to me now as there's celebrations taking place. Not really sure at this point who has been voted in, but they're making an awful lot of noise. The situation as it stands at the moment is that 4 DUP have been elected in total, 2 Sinn Féin, 3 Alliance, 1 SDLP and 1 People Before Profit.
So is the picture get any better for the Ulster Unionists in Belfast, Tracy?
No, it hasn't, Paul, and that's probably one of the stories that will come out very loudly out of Belfast. At the moment, Ulster Unionist Party have not had anybody elected. Their vote is badly down across the board. And as I've been saying earlier, one of the insiders were telling me that their vote could go down as low as 2. So no, they are not having a good day at all. Although it hasn't been confirmed, it appears that Peter Johnson in East Belfast has lost his seat. Really, at the moment, the fights that are continuing are really between Sinn Féin, Alliance and DUP.
And it has been a good election so far for Alliance, hasn't it?
Absolutely. They're very happy with what they have achieved so far. At the moment, they are on course to make a gain in East Belfast, potentially at Sinn Féin's expense. Their representative, their candidate, Mairead O'Donnell, in a sweat for the last seat in East Belfast. And they're very hopeful, that Alliance are very hopeful that they will take a second seat. The other fight to be aware of is going on in North Belfast, in Old Park, where Sinn Féin are hoping that they will benefit from the absolutely extraordinary result that Paul McCusker from the SDLP got, and that his transfers will mean that they will be in contention to get 4 seats in Old Park. And that could mean that the PUP's Julianne Court-Johnston will lose her seat. So to go figure, you could get a situation where Sinn Féin actually take a seat at the PUP's expense.
Tracy, of all of the councils in Northern Ireland, Belfast is the only one which is hung, where there is no unionist or nationalist majority. And does that look set to be the case after this election?
It does, Paul. Now, the one health warning that I will put in all of this is that we are only halfway through the halfway point, if you like, because they have divided the Belfast count into 5 separate wards today, 5 wards tomorrow. So we are really only looking at half the picture. But it certainly does appear that the DUP, while they have put their vote up, they have not managed to make any gains. And Sinn Féin, while they appear to be making maybe a few gains, it won't be enough for them to take control of the council. And given the fact that we are seeing the Alliance vote doing so well, yes, the situation will continue where they will hold the balance of power.
Tracy, thank you very much indeed. You had to shout in order to be heard there occasionally, but we caught every word, and the party is obviously continuing somewhere behind you. Thank you, Tracy. Ken, so there's an emerging picture for Belfast. It remains hung, but we don't know by how much.
Yeah, well, I suppose overall there doesn't appear to be much change in the bigger picture. By the way, I believe that was a Green Party councillor that was elected, so obviously it's a big day for the Greens as well.
Would that have been Anya Grugan?
No, that's Anthony Flynn.
Oh, right, OK.
Yeah. The Belfast City Council, over the years, it's been the centre of our politics. The Alliance Party holding the balance of power, that looks to me as if that's going to continue.
Yes, in fact,
and the other
with a bigger mandate.
Yeah, the other thing that the DUP will have to ask themselves is about vote management, particularly the Lee Reynolds situation. I think fielding 3 candidates in that ward was crazy, as it turned out.
But we're not here to question party policy, or are we?
I know it comes down to STV, and parties have this, Alex was talking about it earlier, have this hard decision to take. How many candidates do they field? And on this occasion, the DUP have made a mistake, there's no question about it.
David, you're back with us. What has caught your eye since you were last talking to us on this programme?
Well, Anthony Flynn being elected in Ormiston, the Greens did have problems there. Ross Brown narrowly won the seat in 2014. It was one of the last seats in Belfast to be declared. And of course, they've had some local difficulties there, and he seems to have won it quite comfortably. So there is a Green vote there. The Greens are very much on the political map in Belfast, a political climate change, if I can steal one of their phrases. And they are very much on the map. And again, they've got potential gains in other places, so their vote will potentially go up in other places like Castle. They've had an OK run in Old Park. And also another thing in Old Park is people before profit. Paul McCusker's transfers have put Fiona Ferguson further on up the count. So she may fall just short, but again, potentials for targets. And also with Michael Collins winning in Colin, it would give me more confidence for Matt Collins keeping the Black Mountain seat, which is the DA next door in West Belfast.
OK. Amanda, as you look at the emerging picture, it's interesting, isn't it, to see the way the actual transfers go. They don't necessarily go in the direction you might think. They mightn't go from one party representative to another candidate.
Yes, well, a lot of times it can be left field, and you wouldn't expect, transfers from one party to another. But I think that's the thing we have to be careful about whenever we're talking about the results coming through today, that we don't lose the run of ourselves in terms of this is going to be like a dramatic change. It is going to be very much still the big 2, which they will want to capitalise on for next week whenever the talks begin.
In fact, the big 2 will have extended their reach, will they not, Alex?
Oh, I think so. I think they're looking at that, as I said earlier, that 65% plus vote. Interesting, Tracy said the DUP seem to have put up their vote, but not their seats. That's another, catastrophe in senses of how PR operates, because in this sort of business, putting your vote up doesn't matter if you're not adding seats to it at the same time at that level of power.
Alex, let's just take a look at the state of the parties while we can. So at this stage, we are seeing the vote figures there. So the DUP have got 44, Sinn Féin 22, the Ulster Unionists 23, the SDLP 15, Alliance 18, and others on 14 at the moment. So, Alex, the independents are doing well in certain areas, and what that does, surely it sends out a message that all politics is local, and this is as local as it gets.
Well, I think it's one of the joys, is what Amanda said, one of the joys of PR elections, particularly if you've 15, 16 candidates for 5 seats. People do vote down the block, and that vote, which you think is very insignificant for number 13, suddenly I remember one candidate losing by 1/4%. Had one other person transferred to him, he would have won, and it cost the party concerned a key seat.
So,
I was just going to say, I think in the last election in 2014, you saw that the Sinn Féin had more votes, but didn't have as many seats as the DUP. So maybe the vote management this time around might balance itself out. Who knows?
Yeah, because more votes doesn't necessarily mean more seats.
It's good for someone like Naomi Long and Alliance, where they're trying to build a profile west of the band, so they may not necessarily transfer some of the support they're getting in areas that they don't usually get it, but it's still good for that party.
I know that, referring back to Judith there, she was talking about one of the candidates, an Alliance candidate in the Newry Down and Mourne, going to do his A-levels before long. He reminds me of Stephen Donnelly, who may be elected in Omagh, because he has been a candidate for 5 different elections and started while he was still at school, and he's still only in his early 20s.
And Patrick Brown was a similar story when he had a shock win. David Ford recruited him in, and he was incredibly young. He was still over in university in England. And again, he won. So Alliance do have this sense of building for the future, getting people in at a young age. And again, you see this in their council group in Belfast. It's a very young council group. They have had generational change in that party, and it is yielding benefits for them. And it basically, it's about taking the long game, playing the long game. And Naomi Long was saying in her interview with you there before, this will be a process of expanding out west. And if they do get some beachheads potentially in places like Omagh where they can build upon, that will over time put assembly seats into play. That'll over time get more council seats into play as well. So that'll be something that Alliance have. They've got targets for future elections.
Who will be the happiest this Friday tea time?
Naomi Long will be incredibly happy as well. I'd imagine Colum Eastwood will be happy just with the result in Derry, and the fact that the SDLP have outpolled Sinn Féin in most of the DEAs up there. That'll be happy, because I mean, if they had had a very bad election, it would have put his European prospects in doubt, and also potentially his leadership down the track, so he'll be happy with that.
And Amanda, to just draw you back to something that you said earlier, there are new people voting here, and we're seeing the result of those votes in the returns to the local councils.
Yes, definitely. You know, what David was talking about there, about there being mixtures within parties of experienced older candidates and fresh enthusiasm. The same thing's reflected whenever it comes to the electorate, whenever it comes to the people who are voting. And I think that you know, Brexit and all the fallout from that, and talks of border polls, and parties actually looking to new generations and trying to bring people through the party where previously they weren't trusted is really good.
I just want to be even-handed here, so a quick few words from you, Alex.
The one thing I'll take away from this, it's the Ulster Unionist Party. No MPs, one MLA, maybe 2 or 3 councillors. The vote has gone down by half in Belfast, Greater Belfast. It seems to be creeping into Down and Ards as well, the vote. Is the Ulster Unionist Party heading? It may survive in rural areas. Is it disappearing from the capital city? Because that will be a huge problem if it is.
Ken Reid.
Well, I think going into the talks on Tuesday, both the DUP and Sinn Féin leadership will be relieved that I don't think they've suffered any damage today. If anything, maybe their position slightly strengthened.
Panel, thank you very much indeed for your time with us this afternoon. And that is the emerging political picture in local government this Friday tea time. And after this short break, I'll have the latest election developments from across the country, plus the rest of today's news on UTV Live at 6. So from Ken, from Alex, Amanda, from David and myself for now, have a very good evening.